Hello, how are you, friends? I am doing all right, and I am going to start another little sewing project for me to share with you. And if you remember back a couple months ago, I made a little haul of semi-thrifted fabric from a local flea market. And this little yellow cotton print from, what's it say here? 2017, Brother Sister Design Studio. Never heard of it, but I have two pieces of this yellow cotton, and it has these kind of, cute little white and black flowers on it. And each piece, looks like each piece is 1.5 yards. So let me check my pattern. I think that should be enough. So that would be well, not 1.5 yards, 1.25 yards. So it'll be 2.5 yards. Ooh, that's going to be tight, I think, for what I want to make. 45. Oh, yeah, it's not going to be enough unless I make it short. All right. Well, what I was going to make out of it, but I still might make it work, is this pattern, the Penny Pinafore from Sew Liberated, and there is the line drawings of it. It came in the same bundle of patterns that I bought the, I don't ever remember the name of the bibs. My shroomeralls, that's what I call them. My little bib overalls that I put the mushroom embroidery on. I thought I had a little more of this fabric than I do. So it actually takes, what did I just look up? Takes 3.25 yards. So I'm almost 1 yard short. Now I have 2 yards of this little plaid check that coordinates kind of nicely with this. It looks good with that. So there's a possibility there might be kind of some mix and match, like the straps and the pockets and maybe some other things that are out of this, so that I can get all of the skirt, all of the front piece and the skirt back pieces out of this. I've got to lay it out and play around with it a little bit. I can probably make it work. Anyway, this is my next sewing project, although I have my bag of fabric here. Here's all my pattern pieces. So again, off camera, printed and patched together and cut out the pattern pieces. All right, well, I'm going to come back after I have figured out if these pattern pieces are if I'm going to be able to make this pattern with this fabric and have cut it out. But so for me, it'll probably be sometime either later this afternoon or evening or tomorrow. But for you, I'll be right back and you'll see what I've decided to do. I'm back sooner than I thought I was going to be, but I think I can get it all laid out. One thing, I decided to go with the shorter length of the options. I normally would go with the longer length, but obviously I don't have enough fabric, first of all. And second of all, I held the front pattern piece up to me and it comes past my knees. I was thinking apron length, it was going to be knee length or shorter, and I didn't want that. But as long as it's longer than my knees, past my knees, somewhere mid-calf, the full length here. Well, I wanted to show you how I have it laid out. Basically, I put out one length of the fabric that I have because they're both the same length, and made sure everything would fit and it does with the shorter length. But I think I can kind of show you. So if this comes to about there on me, again, limitations. So this t-shirt dress comes pretty much right at the kneecap, which for a t-shirt dress lounge around the house, perfectly fine. I want this to come to my waist because it has that gathered waistline in the back. So that should be, and it's just past the knees. And so I think it will be good for what I want. So now I'm gonna cut it out. We will go from there. I'm not gonna worry about it. I think it'll be fine for what it is. It's gonna be a cool cotton little skirt and for summer with a bib. The other thing is the pattern doesn't have, it has back pockets here, which are really cute. but it doesn't have any kind of front pockets. Now I'm not, with the patch pockets on the back, I'm not gonna put bag pockets in the side seams or patch pockets on the front. That just seems like an awful lot of weight down here of bagginess and extra fabric. But if I get done with all my fabric scraps and things and I may make like a little bib pocket for the front of the bib. Nice place to just stick your phone real quick. We'll see how much fabric is left when I'm done. Okay, I think I'm knocking off for the day, so I'll be back here sometime tomorrow. I just don't feel like setting up the ironing board and getting the iron heated up in this machine. It's almost 5 o'clock. But I did get everything cut out of the yellow fabric. All of it. So that was a win. And I have this much fabric left, like just a couple small scraps, and then this one, which is kind of oddly shaped. And there's definitely enough of this that I could put a little chest bib overall pocket on the front, but I'm not going to cut that yet till I get there. So tomorrow will be sewing, pressing, top stitching, assembly day, and maybe I can get it done in one day and edited and up to you all before, September. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It's a pretty straightforward pattern, but it has some interesting detail. So I would say it's a little bit more experienced sewer pattern, which I think most Sew Liberated patterns are, but they're great learning patterns for someone who wants to take their sewing skills a little bit further. And that is why this time I am going to sew it the way they direct you to sew it in their instructions. Because one of the beautiful things about Sew Liberated patterns is they're meticulously finished. Flat felt seams, French seams, all that. There's not a raw edge to be found on a finished garment if you follow their instructions. I don't always follow their instructions, yet I do really love a beautifully finished garment. I just tend to follow my own rules and finish it a little differently than they do. Because I have an overlock machine, a serger, and so quite often I just serge seams and then sew them and press them open depending on my fabric. But this time, I am going to follow the way they have you do it. I'm going to quit talking because I'm going to come back tomorrow and show you what I'm doing, but it'll be like right now. Okay, it is Saturday morning and I did make it back into my sewing room to make the Penny Pinafore. That's what it's called. Okay, and so I'm just doing the first 2 steps, really simple. Make the ties and turn them right side out and press them, and make the straps, turn them right side out and press them. So nothing fancy here. Like I said, I'm going to try to follow Sew Liberated's exact instructions as best I can so that I can tell you how it goes together. And if you have a question about this pattern, maybe I'll answer it for you in the process. And one of the things, and I've done this in the past, and again, I relearn. Sometimes I swear I've forgotten more than I know when it comes to sewing and the clothing construction. But on the straps that are a little wider, to press those seams open before you turn it right side out, I'm going to do that because, again, I'm trying to follow the instructions. And it does leave a nice crisper edge on your turned straps. Be reminded of that instruction that I've known in the past and forgotten about, because I don't make things with straps all that often. Okay, I'm going to go over to the ironing board and put that aside because I'll need it on the next one. Press the seams open on the shoulder straps, press my ties, and then go on to step number 3, which is the pockets. So those should be pretty quick and easy. There's a step I forgot about. I'm turning the last strap right side out here as I'm talking to you, but that is they tell you to edge stitch the skinny straps and to top stitch 1/4 inch away along the edge of each shoulder strap. Okay, I know I'm not completely in frame and you're probably looking at my least flattering angle, but talking about top stitching here. Lengthen your stitch length just a little bit. It doesn't have to be, now there is a top stitching feature on some machines, mine has it, where it triple stitches each stitch. It gives you, using a thin thread, it looks like you have a heavier thread. This kind of application, I'm not going to do that, but it's really nice when you're working on denim. Like if you're doing blue jeans and you want it to look like that heavy top stitching, the gold or orange top stitching that you have on blue jeans, that's the way to go. But on something like this, I have mine set at 295. I was aiming for 3, but that's where the knob stopped, so that's where I went. And the pattern calls for a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the strap. I have my 1/4 inch foot on my machine because it also needed 1/4 inch seam allowance on the straps. Most of this garment is made with 5/8 inch seams, but most of them are French seams. So you sew the first side of the seam. Oh, the first pass of a French seam, you sew it at a 1/4 inch. We'll get to French seams and we'll talk about how to do them when I get to that point. But, so I just put the 1/4 inch foot on my machine for that purpose. So the next step 3, is preparing the pockets. So you have your pocket pattern and it has, you can see there on the top, those little marks and arrows. It's because it has little pleats in the pocket, which I think is a cute little feature, and it makes your pockets a little roomier and it just looks cute. So again, another reason I like to use patterns, and I like to use patterns from really well done independent pattern makers like Sew Liberated and others, is that you get these little details and then you can file that away in your brain if your brain has a more organized filing system than mine, and say, oh, the next time I need to put patch pockets on a skirt or something, I could use this technique, take my regular patch pocket pattern and add, I think they're 1/2 inch, but let me just double check. Oh, actually they're 3/4 inch. Slash the pocket pattern and spread them 3/4 inch each slash, and cut it out, and then pinch it back together and make these little darts. See? Now what I'm going to do, the next step is to, let me double check, make sure I do this right. Sew across the bottom of the pocket at a scant 5/8 inch, folding and securing the pleats as you go. Well, I pressed my pleats because that's what I do. And then sew across the top of the pocket at a 1/4 inch, folding this and securing the pleats as you go. And then you give them a good press, which I already did, making sure that you have mirrored pair. So that means that if this is the top of my pocket and my pleats are going that way, then on this one, this has to be the top of the pocket so that the pleats are going the other way. So when they're on your garment, the pleats are mirrored. So you got to remember which is the top. I'm going to actually put a clip in. I'm going to set these here and make sure they're mirrored. And then I'm going to put a clip on one side of each one. And I'm going to say, that's the top. And then when I go to put them on the garment, I don't know if there's a, look, I don't think they say. Well, they have the pleats going toward the center. Well, I can flip them. Yeah, they can go this way, or it'll be fine. Do it that way. So I'm going to do the 1/4 inch top seam, and then I'm going to change my foot and put the 5/8 seam. And again, scant 5/8. I'll probably move my needle over one click just so that it's inside the 5/8 line, so that when I press it under, I don't have that stitching, that stay stitching showing. Okay, does that make sense to you? I hope it does. Let's keep going. And now I need to like pay attention to my backgrounds. I do have the bedroom door open, but there's nothing embarrassing in the bedroom that you can see. Okay, yeah, I gotta remember to do that more often, because I've watched some of my videos and went, oh, That's kind of a mess. Or the bathroom door is wide open, or which it is today, but I'm not showing you that angle. So, okay, let's get sewing. Friendly reminder to you and myself that whenever you change anything on your machine, make your stitch length longer for basting or stay stitching or something, or move your needle, be sure you hit clear or reset it. However, your machine, some machines, if they're electronic, just have a clear button and they take everything back to default settings, and some don't have that. So whatever your machine has, be sure that you do that. Otherwise, you think you're doing an accurate 5/8 inch seam and you're off by a tick because you've moved your needle. But so that I just remembered to do that. I said, well, I'm going to remind everybody else to do that. So what's our next instruction here? We have pressed the 5/8 seam allowance of the bottom toward the wrong side, using your stitching light as a guide, turning it just onto the back side of the pocket. And then I'm going to, because I only want to go to the ironing board once, fold the top edge of the pocket, the 1/4 inch to the wrong side, and then fold that top edge of pocket toward the wrong side again, using the notch as a fold line, and press edge stitch the hem edge on the top of the pocket to secure the hem and pleats. You'll see on your pattern piece, you've got the little tick marks up here to show you where your pleats go, and then here on the edges, and I did not, oh yeah, I did. I clipped them on one side, not the other. But you have your fold lines, and they should be an inch, or basically an inch from the top, an inch and a, well, oops, maybe an inch and an eighth, probably an inch and an eighth to account for like the fold over edge, you know, the depth, the weight of fabric. Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna go that pressing and then come back and do the edge stitching. Basically what they want you to do is, after I'm going to press this is the bottom, I'm gonna press that, you know, to the back side, and then I'm gonna just edge stitch right along this edge, not like a 1/4 of an inch or anything, just right a couple 1/16 of an inch in. Then this top edge, I'm going to fold under once and press. I can't see my stitching, okay. And then fold it again and press. So I have a narrow hem on top. And then again, I'm going to edge stitch across along this edge, this bottom edge right here, and along the top edge. And that'll make a nice reinforced top of your pocket. Got it? Okay, so let me go press. I know there's a lot of sewists out there who hate the iron and hate pressing. And you know what? Not to be a little snarky, but their finished garments show it. If you want your finished item, be it a bag, curtains, garments, to look professionally made and really good at the end, press as you go. That's probably my number one. Well, I have a top 5. That's another video. Top 5 sewing things. Yeah, I think I'll have to think about that, because now that I've said press as you go is my number 1, I'm thinking, fresh needle in your sewing machine, good thread. Some of the others are things that I think are really important. Also, number 1 thing, now I gotta take my camera out of its holder to show you the number 1 thing that will make your sewing experience better. Hold on. Have a cat in your sewing room. Sewing with cats. They make great pattern weights. Look at her. And they couldn't be cuter. Yeah. Number 1 sewing tip. Sew with cats. Okay, pockets are done and ready. And I hope you can focus. That's my top edge with 2 rows. One, you know, I did the first row on this from this side. Again, focus camera. There we go. Edge stitched right along, you know, the folded edge there, and then top stitched, edge stitched along the top there. So 3 layers of fabric, 2 rows of stitching, tops of those pockets are not gonna wear out or gap or fray or anything. And then the bottom, I pressed under 5/8 and edge stitched. So those are good to go. Let's go see what the next part is. Okay, baste the pockets in place on the side panels, aligning the notches using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Return your stitch length to regular. See, they don't leave anything out in these instructions, which I love. Yes, they're a little bit more advanced patterns than maybe a beginner sewer is comfortable with, but they really hold your hand through it and walk you through it. So between that and hopefully what I can provide for you here, we're gonna make this, and you'll be able to follow this along. Okay. Return your stitch length to regular and sew the bottom of the pockets in place on the side panels with an edge stitch. So now here's a question that I have. Why did they have me edge stitch that folded edge when I'm going to edge stitch again it onto the side panels? If I weren't following what they're telling me to do, because they didn't want me to just tack that in place. No, I mean, I guess it was to secure the pleats. No, but that was the first line. The second line doesn't, the pleats are already, yeah, I wouldn't do that. If it were me, I would just fold it under so that that first line of stitching that held the pleats in place was out of sight. Then I would pin everything, I'd still do the top edge. I would pin anything onto the side panels, and then I would just edge stitch this on, unless, yeah, it's just an edge stitch. I was wondering if maybe to match the top where you have 2 lines of sewing, they had you come back and, or did I do that wrong? Nope. You know, so then there were, 2 lines of stitching on the bottom of the pocket that matched the 2 lines of stitching on the top of the pocket, which would have been an option. Where's my little measuring thing? Because I could have done 3/8. Instead of edge stitching that fold in place, I could have done a 3/8 inch, would have held the edge down, and then edge stitched it onto the side panels, and then I would have had a double row of stitching there visually that matched the top of the pocket. And I think I would like that better. I am not going to unpick this little tiny bit of edge stitching, but now when I go to edge stitch it onto the side panel, I got to match my stitches up pretty well so that I don't have a weird double line of stitching that's just like a skosh off of each other. So I don't know. I haven't checked for corrections on their website for that, nor do I follow any of their Facebook groups or anything. So if you've made this pattern before, you know that's been changed. Let me know. Okay, so I have these pockets basted and stitched on along the bottom, and I'm going to try to show you. Let's see, this light, can I turn that light so you can see it better? That bottom edge. I'm not thrilled with that double line of stitching, and my machine's pretty accurate, and I tried real hard to line that back up again. And it just, I'm not that picky, and nobody's going to be looking at my bum that much. But you know what I'm going to do? One, because I do put a lot of things in my pockets, and I am going to go back, not over those, because obviously I've already got 2 rows stitched and it looks like a mess. But I'm going to do a second row of stitching here at 3/8 of an inch away from the edge so that it mimics the top of the pocket. And it'll be another strength added row of stitching to add strength to the bottom of the pocket. So when I throw my phone in there, when I throw keys in there. Okay, now we're done with these pockets. So these are the side panels. There you go. There's a pocket. You can see the top edge of the pocket, nicely reinforced. And I went back and did another row of stitching on the bottom. So this is my first handy tip for hip pockets, a handy tip. Helpful tip maybe for someone making this pattern for the first time. I would ignore that one instruction to fold up that 5/8 inch on the bottom and then edge stitch it. I wouldn't I probably wouldn't do that because your pleats are already held in place. And if you're very careful when you're placing it on here, if they're pressed, they shouldn't open up. Also stitch in the direction of the pleat so you're not stitching into the fold of the pleat and opening the pleat up. So what I would do, I would then on here edge stitch it down and then stitch it again 3/8 of an inch away, and you have a nice reinforced bottom and you don't have that awkward double row of edge stitching on the bottom of the pocket. It's not that noticeable, but I think it's an extra step that's unneeded. And if you are being particular, or if you are top stitching these on with a contrasting thread color to make another, you know, statement, if you were making this out of a solid fabric and you wanted some, you know, stitch detail in your top stitching, that would be more noticeable. So, okay, let's go on to the next step. Inserting godets. So this is probably one of the steps that's going to make this garment a little trickier than the average beginner or advanced beginner sewer. But again, we have steps A through K on putting in these godets, so it shouldn't be a problem, says I. I'm going to go grab my godet, come back, and we'll take it step by step. Because Lilith moved, I can get to my pattern pieces now. Robert Godet. No, it's Robert Goulet. And none of you are probably old enough to remember Robert Goulet. Anyway, and Edie, right? Okay, so we have 2 pieces. Okay, before I take those apart, make sure I clipped my notches. I thought I did. Oh, there they are. Okay. Make sure you clip all your little notches or mark them in whatever way you mark your thingy-mahooties. Okay, so with wrong sides together, pin one of the godets to the center back, lining up notches. Sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance only from the notches at the top of the godet to the hem. Clip into the seam allowance a 1/4 inch at that notch on both layers. Back piece, and again, double check that I've got all my notches marked, clipped. Yes, I did. Because sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, I don't always clip my notches because I'm like, it's a straight seam. I don't need notches. I don't need no stinking notches. Ooh, nachos. That's what I want for dinner. Okay, center back, cut on the fold. We are doing, remember, wrong sides together. And if you have a print, or, well, not a print, because a print you should be able to tell the back side. But if you have something, you know, a plaid that's woven, or a seersucker, or a solid that you can't really tell front of the back, be sure you mark it well. Where's my little clippies? Aha, there they are. Okay, well, obviously it's got to be down here because the bottom should match up. Okay, so there's my first matching point, the notches. Maybe, do I want nachos or do I want to go to nachos? I've never been to Mississippi. It's right next door. It's only a couple hours away. I should probably go to Mississippi sometime. Always kind of felt about Mississippi what I used to feel about Alabama till I came here, and then I bought a house here, and then I moved here. And here I am. I think this notch, where are my pieces? When in question, grab your pattern pieces and try to match everybody up. Okay, those match there. See, why are you like this, people? All right, well, I'm going with the bottom seam edge, and my side double notches are matching. There are notches up here that don't match. They're off by about, I got my little handy dandy measuring thingy. They're off by about 1/4 inch. So maybe that's where they're supposed to be. Okay. So I'm gonna use the bottom hem and the side notches as my indicator that I have this in the right the correct place. I'm going to sew the seam at 1/4 inch, wrong sides together. So there's my right side and there's my right side. So they're wrong sides together. That's probably the thing about French seams that you got to get in your brain that makes it tricky. And then, oh, Lordy, try doing French seams on something that doesn't have an obvious right and wrong side, and your brain will just melt. You're not gonna. Okay, maybe not your brain. My brain will melt, and I will struggle going which. Okay. Oh, and then remember this instruction. This is important with your French seams and your godets. Godets. Only from the notches at the top of the godet to the hem. So we're not starting our little 1/4 inch seam. Where are we? Way up here. We're finding that notch that I was just questioning, and we're starting from there. And I don't normally backstitch because usually things get in, one seam gets enclosed in another seam, but I don't want a little hole at the top of my godet. I'm probably going to do like 2 or 3 little back stitches right there. If you don't like back stitches, turn your stitch length down to like 1 for like 3 stitches, and then turn it back to 2.5 or wherever your regular stitch length is. And those tiny little stitches will hold it like a back stitch without the bulk. What was that just flew right there? Did you see that? I can't wait till I go through editing, because I thought I saw like just talking with a friend and my sisters about orb photography and orbs and ghosts and stuff like that. So my friend had a crazy story. I don't really put much stock in orbs. I said, unless one just floats right through the room and I see it with my bare eyes, then I might believe that, there might be something above normal, out of normal about an orb. But if I see one in a photograph of a dusty old house, I'm like, with a flash, I'm like, Anyway, again, random shit coming on my brain. Okay, let's go sew a go. There's got to be a go day, go sew, go day. I don't know. Let's just sew it and shut up. Okay. Okay, friends. We have sewn that wrong sides together, and then I've taken it to the iron, pressed the seam before I pressed it open. I always like to set my seams, but once it's sewn like that, I press that flat, and then I open my seam allowance and press the seam allowance. I don't know, it just makes everything seem to go. So now my seam allowance is pressed open. Also in the instructions, and now I realize, I think, what the 2 different notches 1/4 inch apart are. We'll get to that when we go to sew the godet, the sides to this part. Anyway, you make sure you take a notch, the notch that was in the godet. How many times can I say that word? You also clip that into the seam allowance of the skirt back, so that when you press the seam open, you're not pressing this part that's not sewn. You're just pressing from that notch down, and then that's all there. Okay? Now, the second part of the French seam is now you're going to take it right sides together, right along that seam that you just pressed open. You're going to fold it. See? Can you see inside there what you got? Oh, here's my thread I'm trying to get a hold of. Can you see in there? So now you're going to just make sure that seam edge is right on the edge, and there's no weirdness. Now I would probably do this back at the ironing board and give it another press in this direction, but I'm not, and this cotton is pretty cooperative. I could probably put it here on my table and give it kind of a finger press. You can't see it, but that's what I just did. Let me double check their instructions so that I'm not just jumping ahead doing what I would do, but what they want us to do. The lovely, lovely, talented designers at Sew Liberated. So, right sides are facing. Seam is right on the folded edge. Make sure the seam allowances above the clip notches are free from the seam. Sew only from the notches at the top of the Godet, make a drinking game out of it. Have a little sip of champagne every time I say Godet. To the hem using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So that will take that 1/4 inch seam and put it well, the raw edges well within the seam allowance, and you won't have things sticking out on the right side. And then you repeat that on the other side. So I'm going to go do that, show you what it looks like, and then I'll repeat it on the other side, and we'll be able to go on to the next step. Okay. Okie doke. Here is now our back panel. Now that you have the Godets in there, it is one piece. Show you the finished French seam. So beautiful finish. You know, I should use them more often, to be quite honest. I don't, and I should. I have said Godet like 127,000 times already in that little section, but I never told you what a Godet is. Now, you probably already know. But what it is a little triangle-shaped piece of fabric added between the gores of a skirt, or the side panel, side and back panel, like that's what this one is, to add a little flare at the bottom, give it a little kick, little extra swing, if you will. So contrasting Godets are really, really cute, and I debated that. Well, if I didn't have enough fabric for this, I was going to do that, but I ended up having enough fabric. But so like I could have done a contrasting fabric for the Godets and for the pockets and for the straps, and kind of had a little mixy-matchy kind of thing going on, but I didn't want to do that. Next, oh, also, because of all of our notch clipping and our pressing, you will now see that you have one continuous raw edge there with it pressed properly that goes right from that back piece into the Godet. Hopefully, after this step, I'll be done saying that word over and over and over again. Okay, what's our next thing? With wrong sides facing, pin one of the side panels to the back panel, lining up notches. Use that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So again, basically we're going to take one of these puppies that have the pocket on them, and I'll figure out which one goes left, which one goes right here in a second, and stitch it to our back piece with a French seam, just like we did. So I'm not gonna really walk you through that. I'm just gonna do that, press it, finish it, bring it. Then I'm gonna bring it. Then we're gonna probably get into the trickier parts of the assembly, which is the back casings, the back ties, and the straps, and the front facing. And I don't want this video to be 6 hours long. We're gonna skip ahead. You are gonna skip ahead. I will skip ahead with you, but I will stay here in my sewing room and do these next two parts. But then I'll come back to you after I've done them, so that you're not just watching me do the same stuff over and over again. Okay. Back at you in a minute. Okay, people. Woo-hoo! We've got a back piece, a full back piece with the side pieces on it. So I have my pockets on my side pieces. I have my you-know-whats, my little triangular pieces, which, you know, I should have maybe, to demonstrate them, made them in a contrasting fabric, but yeah, that didn't happen. But you can see the top of the point of the Godet is very neat. No puckers, no runs, no drips, no errors. And can you tell I grew up watching TV in the 70s and 80s? Because that's another random reference to Johnny Bench and Rust-Oleum or Cryo. Something. Okay, there's my finished seam allowances on the Godets and the side seams. Looks gorgeous. I'm really loving the way this is going together, which means I'm about to make some major mistake, I'm sure. I've also taken my back casing pieces, folded under one short end, 5/8 of an inch on each of them, and the one long end, 5/8 of an inch. That's the next instructions. I figured I was already over there. Let's do it. Okay. Return to our thing. So on the waist edge of the back, there are notches for the shoulder straps. Line up one end of the shoulder strap between the notches on the wrong side of the back Pin the shoulder in place with 2 pins, with the pin heads extending past the seam allowance to prevent losing one between the layers. Like I said, they're not going to let you make any mistakes in these instructions. If you follow them to the letter, except for that pocket thing, it wasn't really a mistake. It was just a design choice that I would make a little differently. Okay, pin the second shoulder strap into place. Okay, we're going to do that. So wrong side, put that facing up. And again, I'm not moving the camera because it wobbles and does all kinds of weird stuff. And there's my 2 notches in my straps. So another thing, press as you go and clip your random threads as you go. Can you tell I grew up as a 4-H sewing kid? That those 4-H judges, those ladies, they went over everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you didn't screw it up. Okay. Yeah, they were something, those ladies. But I mean, obviously, I learned to sew, and 4-H was my life when I was a kid. So this is what they mean when they say to do this way. And this is kind of the way I pin everything anyway, but wrong side, there's a couple of clips / notches. Those straps are pinned on there. Now, what's the next thing they tell me to do? With the right side of the back casing facing the wrong side of the back, and the unfolded short end at the side seam, pin the back casing to the waist seam of the back. Okay, let's go over that step by step. Here is one of our back casings. With the right side, boopity-doo, facing the wrong side, turn this around, boopity-doo. So I'm going to look at it this way. And the unfolded short end at the side seam, pin these here. Okay, I'll show you in a second after I get them clipped in place. Okay, so I'll show you on this one and then I'll do the other one and we're good to go. Okay, boop. So let's double check that the right side of the back casing is against the right side of the back casing facing the wrong side of the back. Yes, unfolded end against the side seam, folded end toward the center. Pinned in place, the strap is between there, and so to help me remember that those pins are in there holding that strap, those straps in place, I put a clip, better to show you this way, between where the pins are. So when I'm sewing and I'm getting close to that clip, I'll be like, oh, yep, watch out for those pins, because we don't sew over pins, people. I think that idea is kind of going away. I think back in the day, I think a singer or somebody, kind of said that, oh, our machines are so powerful, you can sew right over your pins. You don't have to take the pins out. Well, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I don't know. I used to have a lot of older generation sewists come into the store and they insisted that they could sew over their pins. And I'm like, you just spent $5,000 on a brand new electronic, very well-timed precision sewing machine, and you're going to sew over your pins? No, you're not. Not on my watch, you're not. But hey, it's your money, right? Okay. So we have that all pinned together or clipped together, whatever you use. Let's just double check how we're going to sew this. I think it's just a simple 5/8 seam, but we're going to double check. Figure 5B. That's what I got. So, using a 5/8 inch seam allowance, press the seam allowances down toward the skirt and the back casing up. Okay, I'm going to stitch, I'm going to press, and we'll come on to the next one, which I think is understitching, just to keep everything in place. And well, again, one step at a time. Okay, I'm going to show you this step because I swear I thought for sure I had made a mistake because it looked so wrong. So here's the correct right side of the back, right? And they say to press that seam allowance toward the skirt and the top up. And I'm like, that looks backwards. But then look what happens. Now I'm gonna do the next stitch with part. But when you fold that down and you have the straps up here, that casing becomes a casing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. But let's go back to, so just trust and believe it's gonna work. But the next step is understitching. And so let me read what they tell you and then we'll go from there. Understitch the seam allowance to the back casing on the 2-inch. Okay, just let's do that. Hold on. On the seam allowance at the center back between the channel openings, turn the seam allowance under toward the right side. That doesn't, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm struggling here a bit with their instructions. So if I'm struggling here a bit with their instructions, I'm glad I'm doing this video for you if you're trying to do this dress. And so 5D, for those of you following along at home. I understand understitching to the back casing, but the next part of it, on the 2-inch of seam allowance at the center back, which mine is not 2 inches, and it wouldn't be 2 inches. Or do they mean that whole? Hold on, let me measure. Let me see if I know what they're talking about. They don't have a very good illustration. I usually go by illustrations. I don't know where they're getting this 2-inch measurement. Between the channel openings. Okay, well, I have a space between my channel openings, which you should, but mine is not 2 inches. It is about, I can't hold this right. It's just a skosh. It's a 1/2 inch. So maybe it's printing error, the 1/2 inch between. But this is between the channel. Turn the seam allowance under toward the right side and edge stitch in place to clean finish the center back. On the remaining seam allowance, trim the seam allowance, including the strap, to 1/4 inch. So that's telling me to take this seam allowance that's between these two guys and fold it to the right side, which I don't like. So maybe I'm misreading it. Let me get my scissors to do some clipping. So what I'm gonna do, and I think is what I would do, yeah, it's got to be right there. I'm just gonna, there's actually notches right there. I'm just gonna take those notches all the way to the seam allowance. So see, I clipped that seam allowance all the way to that stitching line, which is when I stitched the 5/8 here, I can't keep turning it around. I just kept going from one casing to the next. But I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna turn that to the inside and kind of give it a squeezy squeeze, maybe put a clip on it, so that when I understitch here, well, I just put the clip in it, that leaves, there's no raw edge there and there's no wrong stuff on the outside. Does that make sense? All right, so now we're gonna understitch. And what is understitching, you ask? Well, that keeps your seam allowances going the direction you want them to. So they're saying, this again is, why did I press my seam allowances towards the skirt if I'm going to understitch them to the casing? And so this is no, understitch the seam allowances to the back casing. Okay, I think if I were to do this, I would understitch it this way. I would have it folded toward the skirt, and I would understitch just a couple needle widths away from the seam here, so that the seam allowance is always going to be kind of wanting to roll toward the skirt. Because if I stitch it up here between, you know, so that the seam allowance is stitched to the casing, again, when I roll this out, you're going to have a line of stitching right there. And understitching is supposed to be in the inside. So I'm going to do it my way. And I don't know if I'm just misreading the instructions and somebody else can come along and go, yeah, Beth, you got that wrong. Because if I understitch, so I've got this seam allowance pressed toward the skirt body, the bottom of the skirt, and away from the casing. If I understitch just on this side of that seam, that's going to catch those seam allowances down and make a nice crisp edge there. And then when I get to this weird middle that I just clipped that aside, I'll keep going and that'll catch that. I think that's what they're meaning. I just don't know why they wrote it the way they did and didn't give you a better illustration of it. I think that's gonna help. I hope it helps you. Sometimes talking through it and showing you is gonna help me, because that's gonna secure the strap down a little bit better. Yeah, it's all just gonna be happier. Okay, and that is what understitching is. It's sewing like the seam allowances of a facing to the facing, not to the outside, not top stitching. So it's always on the inside where you don't see it, which is why I think there's something funky in those instructions. But it helps keep the facing or the raw edge, the whatever, from rolling to the outside. It just kind of helps everything stay where it's supposed to stay, but only if you do it right. All right, I'm gonna edge stitch, press, or understitch. And then I think the next is I might do the next two steps. So and now that we figured that out, now you fold that, after you do that, you're gonna fold the casing around to the right side of the back and press them neatly into place and edge stitch that folded edge of the back casing to the back, forming channels for the waist ties. Okay, so I'm gonna do those two things and then show you where we're at when we're done with that, okay? Because I'm trying to this is gonna be like a 3-hour video. No, it's not, hopefully. But. Okay, so this is now done. And I'm going to give you another helpful hint. When you're doing this this part, just double, triple check as you're sewing that your straps are not underneath somewhere getting sewn in. Mine didn't, but as I was doing it, I had to like double check them a couple times. And I keep thinking, wow, that's wide, but it's gonna gather up because that's what we just did. I'm not real happy with this little taggy thing back here. I kind of wish I had tucked the raw edge in, and then maybe I still will. I might, actually, I'm just gonna I'm gonna hand sew that when I'm all done. I'm just gonna take a few tacking stitches to take that little 1/2-inch bit of seam allowance and roll it under and sew it down. So there's no raw edge and it's not like a little tag flipping up, because that bugs me. It's bugging me. Maybe that's what I was supposed to do and I just didn't understand what they were saying. Much, much better. See, it's just, and I got some little fuzzy ends to clip. Can you, come on, babies. There we go. It's not the neatest, but from the outside it looks okay, and there's going to be a knot right there. It's where these little guys are going to come out and tie. So nobody's going to see it, but I just felt like it was going to get a lot of wear and tear there, and I don't like that. Okay, now the next step is to take your strippy straps that you made and put a pin on them or whatever bodkin typey thing you have, and let me double check their pattern instructions. Use a safety pin. Draw the waist ties through the channel starting at the center back opening until the raw edge of the tie is even with the seam allowance. Baste it securely in place. Okay, that's what I thought. So that's what I'm going to do. Just going to run these little babies through these channels from the center out, tack them in place, and then we'll go on to we've just made the back of the skirt, and I know that I have at least an hour of video, so there might be some, and I haven't shown you me actually doing it. Okay, now we're moving on to the front, and the next instructions on what might be, no, not quite the last page. Oh no, not the last page of instructions. Okay, are to do some stay stitching on these curved edges. That just keeps everything, because they're kind of on the bias and they're on the curve, from stretching out of place. So 1/2 inch from the edge along those 2 curved edges on there, and also the same on your front facing pieces. Same thing, so that when you go to put everything together, it hasn't stretched all out of place and gotten all wonky. Interestingly enough, this facing does not have any interfacing in it, but I think it's gonna be okay. I think this is sturdy enough. I was a little confused, because usually facings have interfacing to kind of stiffen all this up, but I think there's probably gonna be enough stitching and jazz. So, okay, I'm gonna do that, and let's see if the next, can I not skip a step, but now we're ready to attach the front to the back. And you're gonna do that with a French seam again. So you're gonna start with your wrong sides together, and just a few pinning and lining alignment notes that I'm gonna make. Don't think that the raw edge of the edge of the front, the top of it's gonna line up with the top of your casing. It's not. It's gonna extend over a little bit, and that's why it's supposed to. So make sure your bottoms match up, and look for your little notches or clips, whatever you do. The second thing is, it's very clear in the instructions, but I just want to go over it with you. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance, because we're doing a French seam and wrong sides together, but you want to start sewing from right here, right below where that casing is. So below this red clip, start there and sew to the hem, and leave the top part where this clip is and above free, because I think that's where the facing and all the jazz is gonna be attached. So we're gonna follow their instructions, and that's what their instructions say, and do that on both sides. And I'm gonna do that, press it, do all the things. I've shown you how to do French seam, don't need to come back. And then we'll go on to, okay, all right, yep. It'll all be covered in the next couple steps. So I'm gonna go ahead and do these 2 French seams, press them, do all the jazz, and then we're gonna come back with the facing and the side casing and all that funkiness, and we should be almost done. Here we are, finished French seams on the inside, connecting the front to the back. Now, while I'm showing you this, let me show you something that could be confusing in the instructions. When you do the second part of the French seam, the 3/8 inch seam, after you have gone right sides together and are enclosing the raw edge, this time you go from the very top of the back casing all the way to the hem. And if you've trimmed your seam allowances and pressed and everything, that is what it's going to end up looking like. Ignore my unclipped. I can't ignore my unclipped threads. So, okay. Once again, I'm going to remind you, when you're doing, after any point after the straps and the ties have been inserted, just double check as you're sewing, because there's a few parts when you're sewing this all together that you're going over like multiple layers of fabric, and you're supposed to have like a little bump in the fabric, but sometimes there's not. So it could be easy to get those straps or ties caught in a seam or something. So that's what the top of that seam's going to look like. Now I'm going to go on to the next step. It's coming together. It's like a pinafore. Now, you can't tell by that wad of fabric in front of my face. Trust me, it is. Okay. Okay, next few steps. Do I say okay every time I turn the camera back on? I probably do. The next step is just stitching a 1/4 inch away from the long curvy edge of the facing piece, and then pressing that under the raw edge under. That's self-explanatory. This part is the trickier part. So I've got this kind of, probably putting it on my dress form would be the easiest way to do it. I've turned my pinafore inside out. I found my straps on the back and I've crossed them over, making sure that they aren't twisted, and then I'm clipping them to the front of the bib, wrong side out. It just is easier that way. So now I can go and either go try it on and make sure these are the right length, or baste them in place and try and see if they're the right length. Or just kind of trust that the way they designed it will work. I don't think I had to, sorry, this is really awkward. I don't think I had to really adjust the length of the straps on the little bibs. Okay, so that's, oh, it's not gonna gather very much. Maybe I should have made a bigger size. Okay, you know what? I didn't want to go, because I don't want to take this off. So that's why I'm avoiding, but I think I can. It's on over this outfit, not the best. Back when my sewing room was not in the front room of my house, right by my front door with big windows, when it was in the basement where nobody knew where I was and I could hide, I would quite often, when I got to this point in a garment, basically sew it naked. It's, again, more information than you needed. I mean, in my underwear, not ass naked, you know, but just be in like my bra and underwear. Here is the problem, getting all these straps. Yeah, I popped that one with a, okay, are we twisted? Are we twisted? No, okay. Yeah, I think these are gonna be just right. I don't think I need to adjust them at all. And considering there's a garment on underneath. I mean, there will be a t-shirt or a tank or something on underneath when I actually wear it, but I think that's gonna work. And of course this will gather up with the ties. I don't know if you can see that. And my hair won't be in the way. So I don't think I need to adjust the length of the straps at all. Now this could also be an option, and I think they give this option on the bib overalls. If you're a little bustier or a little curvier, and I wish I had done this on my overalls, to be honest. If you're curvier, bustier, wider shoulders, larger on the top half of your body, I would make my straps longer than they are cut. I don't remember, 20 some inches than they are, you know, on the pattern, just to give yourself extra. You can always cut them off shorter, and that way you have, you know, you do have that wiggle room, if you will. And the other thing I would do with that extra length, you could put buttonholes and buttons on the straps. Buttons on the front of the bib and strap holes on the button. No. Words. You could put buttons on the bib and buttonholes on the strap, and even like 1, 2, 3 buttonholes, you know, ½ inch apart, in case you want to adjust them, make them a little more adjustable. If your sizes change, or you wear different undergarments that put the girls in different places, whatever it might be. And it's also easier to get in and out of on the overalls. Obviously this is a skirt, so when I'm needing to use the facilities, I'm not unbuttoning this and taking it off. But getting it on, having the option to unbutton, consider it. But either way, if you're a little larger on top, broad shoulders, broad back, larger breasts, consider making the straps just a little bit longer so that you have the room to adjust them as needed, how you want to wear it. You also might want to wear this a little lower and baggier, cat fight, then it's, you know, I don't know. You can always cut things off. It's hard to add them back on. That's all I'm saying. Okay, we're going to do this and we're going to get out of here. Bye. I have sewn the facing on to the front of the bib, front of the dress, right sides together, trimmed my seam allowances down to about a 3/8 to 1/4 of an inch. And I didn't need to clip my curves, but if your fabric is not lying flat when you go to press it, maybe a couple little snips on the curves, but I didn't seem to have a problem. Pressed it really well to the inside. Now they're saying to understitch the seam allowance to the facing, basically as close up here as you can get down to the side seam. So I'm going to do that off camera. And oh, I did something wrong. They say to leave the top straight edge of the front bib untrimmed for stability. Oops, I trimmed mine. So probably do what they say, not what I did. I might still top stitch around that top edge, which would give extra stability to the top since I trimmed the edge. But I'll leave that to you. Now, also, before I forgot to do this because I was following their instructions. If you were to want to put a front bib pocket on here, I would do it probably after I put the straps on, but before I put the facing on. But you could still do it now because the facing will move out of the way, and you could make a pocket for this front, like right here. I think for now I'm not going to, and let me think about this because I really kind of want one. But I could put a lower pocket, like an apron pocket down lower, and it won't matter, and I can do it after everything is assembled. So I think what I'm gonna do, what I will do, and you can make your own decisions, is I'm gonna get this done to everything but the hem and probably try it on off camera. Just when I do I'll decide if it needs a front pocket. I have plenty of fabric, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know that I want a big heavy pocket in the front, like right here on the chest part. I might want it more down on the lower part, like an apron pocket. So I'm gonna wait till I try it on and see what I think. Maybe even wear it a day and see if the back pockets are enough. And if they're not, I can always add a front pocket. And again, I would assemble it. Maybe I would even put little pleats in it, like the hip pockets, or maybe not. And I can always sew those on, just top stitch them on, make them like you would make a regular patch pocket. Nothing too tricky there. And sew it on, you know, after I have worn it and decided. So I'm gonna do my understitching, and then let me see, after the understitching, okay, that's it. There's the understitching, and then down here on the side seams where this part flaps over, and there's another thread. Seems like there's always a random thread or three. You fold this, turn it around where you can see it. You fold that, gosh darn it, down over that side seam, and then from the right side stitch in the ditch or blind stitch it with when you hand stitch it down. However, to secure this part of the facing to that side seam to secure it, keep it from flipping out. That, in addition to the understitching, will keep that facing from pulling up under here when you're wearing it. And then you're basically done except for the hem. And I'm not going to go into the hem because I got to trim some things up, try it on, make sure it's the length I want. But the bottom hem is just 5/8 and 5/8 and straight stitched. There's no blind hem stitching or fancy, because it's a good size hem, and it does have some curves to it with the I get to say the word again, the Godets in it, add a little bit of a curve to it. So they have you stay stitch basically 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. Use that as your guide to turn everything under, press, turn under again, press, and edge stitch. So I'm going to do my edge stitching, securing those side seams, and the other thing they have you do, which I haven't decided how I'm going to do, if I'm going to follow their instructions. I did it this way on the bibs, or the overalls, and I could see my stitching from the right side, and I wasn't real thrilled. It kind of looked a little puckery. They have you blind stitch. Can't get this around where you can see it. They have you hand blind stitch the edge of the facing down on the inside. I don't know that I like that. But I didn't finish this raw edge other than pressing it under. So I'm kind of thinking, before I stitch the side seams down, this little part down, I might just straight stitch along that edge and see how it wears. It's not going to pull. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. But you do you decide how you want things to be done, and you blind stitch it down if you'd like. You could also just stitch it down by machine in there, and then you have visible stitching on the outside. Depends on what your bobbin thread looks like from the outside. You could mark it and top stitch it if that works for you. I don't think I want the visible stitching on the outside. And also now I'm thinking that if I were to top stitch this top edge, like I said, that because I trimmed the seam allowance, unlike they told me to, that I might just top stitch this whole top edge from the side seam up and across and down. It's going to look good. It's going to add a little extra. It's going to keep that facing from flipping out even more than understitching would. So I'm going to deviate from the instructions here. So you follow the instructions if you want. I've just gone through what they told you to do. But if you want to do it my way and you don't mind visible top stitching, then top stitch that whole curved edge, and don't bother with the understitching because it won't matter because the top stitching is going to hold in place. I think that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is two things I'm going to do off camera right now. I am going to just straight stitch this folded edge down right along the edge of the facing. Then I'm going to flip everything to the inside and catch the side of this into the side seam with some stitch in the ditch there, and then top stitch all the way around the top edge. That's what I'm going to do. I promised you I was going to do this by their instructions, but I can't help but deviate a little bit. Then I'll probably just probably from here on out, after this, you're going to see a reveal, unless something in the next two steps that I'm doing merits me coming back and telling you that I did it a different way. Okay? Does that sound like a deal? Because yeah, we're well over an hour, and even with editing, I don't know that I'm going to be able to speed this up and have it under an hour. But if you came here to see how to sew this garment, this pattern, from beginning to end with helpful tips, then I think I covered it. If I didn't, drop into the comments and say, I don't understand this step. Can you go over it again? And I'll do my best to answer your comment in such a way that it makes sense. But I think I covered all the tricky parts. I hope it was helpful. Let me know, and we're gonna go from there. Okay, that sounds like a deal, doesn't it? Sounds like a deal to me. Okay. Oh, hi Henry. Henry's back in the house. And hi buddy. Okay, I gotta go. Bye. So that's my finished project. I like it. Yeah, it feels like it's going to be comfortable. I would like it a little longer. It wouldn't have to be quite as long, I don't know, as the other cut, the other view, but a little longer would be more comfortable for me. Like when I sit down, I just don't like things at the knee, or I don't know. And I also think perhaps the next time I make this, depending on the fabric I choose, I would make it a size up. Just for the record, I made a size 16 per my measurements. It fits. But something like this, summer garment, I might like it a little looser. And with the drawstring ties in the back, I can always cinch it up tighter if I want it a little tighter. I'm glad I didn't put the chest pocket on, because I do think with the way this one fits, it would bother me. I wouldn't like it as well. So as drafted, as it's very good. It went together perfectly. I did make this fundamentally all in one day. I did cut the fabric out the night before, but I don't even know what time it is. I don't have a clock in this room, so I don't know how long. I didn't track how many hours it took me actual sewing time to make it, but you can tell by this video. You can kind of double this video probably, and that's how long it took me to make it start to finish, not including setting up the pattern, printing the pattern, taping it together, cutting it out, and then cutting the fabric out and laying it out. Add another couple hours probably for that, but pretty quick sew. And I think it's a fun pattern that you could do some different things with. Like you could add some contrasting fabric for the straps and the pockets and the godets or whatever. If you don't have the, what did I say, a 3 1/4 or whatever amount of fabric it would take. Well, that's for the longer version, which is what I would make. Maybe you want to put a ruffle on the bottom of it. And I don't, but maybe you do. And that might be a cute modification to it. Again, front pockets, if that's your jam. I think side seam bag pockets would probably work in this. I just think they'd add a lot of bulk around the hips with the gathering at the back and the pleated pockets at the back. But if you're a real side seam pocket person, put them in there. There's side seams. Again, there's a little bit of fudging around to put them in with those godets attaching there and the French seams. But it's not impossible. Let's just say it's not. I know it's not impossible. And then this is the Penny Pinafore by Sew Liberated. I will put a link to Sew Liberated in the description, probably directly to this pattern. And I highly recommend it. And there's a lot of techniques that you learn in this pattern. And again, it's an advanced beginner pattern, I would say, or intermediate pattern. It's not a beginner pattern. Between the French seams and all the fiddly stuff with the godets and it's and that whole casing thing, but it goes together pretty well. So very well, actually. I didn't have to rip anything out, and other than having to figure out that whole thing with the casing and the way they the way they had you do it was right. The only thing was that little section in the middle that there was something weird there, the understitching. But we covered it, didn't we? Tell me if we did. Tell me if I answered those questions and made that make more sense to you. And I'm going to enjoy wearing this. I get to work tomorrow at the Five and Dime doing lunch, and I think because it kind of looks aprony, it's a pinafore after all, so I think it'll look appropriate for the work, which just means I have to go take it off now so that it's clean tomorrow when I want to wear it. Because knowing me, I'll go do something in the kitchen or somewhere and mess it up, and then I won't be able to wear it tomorrow. So the other drawback is this cotton fabric. I just know that I will have to probably iron it every time I wash it, which isn't the end of the world. But it's not going to be wash and wear unless I line dry it, and that kind of keeps it from getting too wrinkled. We'll see. Anyhow, I hope this was helpful. I know it's already, if you're still here, thank you for watching all the way through. I will be back with more, maybe something a little shorter next time. And oh, here's Henry. Hi, Henry. What do you think? Okay. Yeah. He's also, we're flea free now. If you watched my rainbow skirt video all the way to the end, we had a little bit of a summer flea problem here at Chez Nelly, and it has been taken care of. Combing the cats regularly and, getting rid of the fleas as I comb them out, and his flea collar, and vacuuming, steaming, vacuuming and steaming, vacuuming and steaming, lots of cleaning, and all the laundering every fabric thing I could launder, and drying it on hot, which really bothered me because you know me, I like to hang things on the line, but got to do what you got to do. And then the final coup de grace against the fleas were these flea traps that I got online. I think I got them on Amazon. Of course, once I started talking to people about fleas, my phone, and researching things, my whole Facebook feed was full of ads for different kind of flea remedies. But the one that worked the best are these flea traps that are light traps with sticky bottoms in them. And I bought 4 of them, and I have them dispersed throughout the house, especially in the areas either A, where the cats hang out the most, or B, where I was seeing fleas. Oddly, I was seeing them in my bathroom. The cats don't even rarely go in there. Where they were coming from, I don't know. But I put the flea trap in there for 2 nights, and they're gone. They're gone. They're gone. And I'm glad about it. I comb him out every time he comes in from the outside, and anytime I see anybody scratching, itching or scratching, they get a good comb out with the flea comb and the flea killer, just a Dawn dish soap and warm water in a bowl, in a cup, disposable cup thing. And I've only maybe found 1 or 2 at doing that, and haven't had any jump on me. It's all good. It's good. It's good here in my neighborhood now that they're gone. Okay, that's your flea update for today. I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for being with me. I think this is my 3rd goodbye, which makes it a Michigan goodbye officially. Watch out for deer. Take an umbrella. Peace out.